It was Christmas time in 1998. Melissa Trotter's brother had just gotten home on leave from the Army, and the family expected her home for supper. But the 19-year-old community college student didn't show up, and she didn't call.
And then we got home later that night, and the messages were still on the machine, and she hadn't returned any calls. And so I guess it was probably like about 10 o'clock then, and I called one of her, by then I'm calling all of her friends. Do you know where have you seen her? Do you know what's happened? So one of her friends lived close to the college and went to the college, and her car was still there.
For weeks, police, friends, and family searched the damp, chilly woods around Lake Conroe, trying to find any clue of what happened to the affable and pretty young Trotter. Christmas passed, and then New Year's. The Trotters started to expect the worst.
They're asking, personal identification of her. Do you know what she was wearing? Any distinguishing marks, dental records. And so that was really difficult too, because then that there may just be a body to have to identify.
On January 2nd, 1999, 25 days after she had disappeared, hunters found Trotter's body in the Sam Houston National Forest.
Asked him, do you know how she died? And when he said there was a pantyhose, she was strangled with a pair of pantyhose. And our son burst out the door and just, kicking the garbage can. And
police already had their prime suspect. They had arrested Larry Swearingen on December 11th, 3 days after Melissa Trotter had disappeared. He was taken in on outstanding traffic warrants, but witnesses at the community college had said he was among the last people they saw with Melissa on the day she disappeared. In an interview from Texas Death Row, Larry Swearingen said that he and Melissa had been friends. They had seen each other on the day she disappeared, but he is adamant that he had nothing to do with her death.
I've never denied not knowing her. I'm just saying, hey, look, we didn't leave with one another or anything like that. She was there when I left. And, they've taken evidence of a friendship and turned it into a murder.
But prosecutors in Montgomery County say they have a mountain of circumstantial evidence that ties Swearingen to Trotter's murder.
All roads led to Mr. Swearingen. Everything pointed at Swearingen.
There were fibers on her body and clothes, they said, that matched Swearingen's truck and home. Cigarette butts at Swearingen's trailer were the same brand that Trotter smoked. But their strongest evidence, they said, was the murder weapon.
It was determined that she'd been strangled by the leg of a pantyhose used as a ligature. The leg of the pantyhose that was removed from her neck, where it was very tightly knotted, was a perfect match to the pantyhose that Swearingen's landlord found in the trailer.
And there was Swearingen's deceitful behavior. He had asked a friend to lie for him about where he was. He tried to implicate a Hispanic killer by writing an anonymous letter in Spanish, a letter that made obvious he didn't know the language, but that he did know details about the crime.
I'm very secure and firm in my belief that we have the right guy and that Swearingen committed this crime.
The jury sentenced Swearingen to death in July 2000, but he has continued to protest his innocence. And since then, more than a half-dozen forensic scientists and nearly a dozen reports analyzing the evidence from Melissa Trotter's body say that it is impossible that Swearingen committed the murder. Melissa Trotter's body, they say, had decomposed so little that she had to have been murdered while Swearingen was already in jail.
They looked at that under the tissue under the microscope, and they said it just has not decomposed hardly at all. This woman died within days of the date her body was recovered, which means Mr. Swearingen is innocent.
Swearingen's lawyers sent the reports to the courts with repeated pleas for judges to examine the new forensic evidence and consider whether he might actually be innocent. Until last week, those pleas failed. The courts ruled that Swearingen should have found and presented the evidence much earlier. And in a ruling in 2009, a judge said that Although on the face of it, the evidence seemed to exonerate Swearingen, the scientists' reports couldn't be considered credible because not all of them looked at the same type of evidence. The science, the judge ruled, just didn't outweigh the state's circumstantial evidence.
And what happened here is a case in which evidence that shows that body wasn't out there very long is turned around because the courts don't understand the basic forensics. They don't understand the basics of how bodies decay.
But last week, in a rare move, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals stayed the execution for Swearingen that had been scheduled for August 18th. They ordered the lower court to review whether the science actually does show that Swearingen is innocent. For Swearingen and his lawyers, it's another chance, another reason for hope.
I don't want to die, not in here. You know, I don't want to be a pincushion for the state. But at the same time, I don't think that, you know, when all the chips fall, that this is going to go through.
Despite the stacks of scientific reports, prosecutors in Montgomery County remain undeterred.
The forensic evidence at this point has not convinced me that there's a problem with the state's case, no. And I'm still trying to keep an open mind, even though it's very frustrating to have to deal with this constant barrage of differing expert opinions that I often don't understand.
For the Trotters, each new report that delves into the graphic details of their daughter's final days just renews their pain and the struggle they've continued for the last 12 years.
To have that image or reading about the eggs of the bugs on your daughter's neck and the animal, you know, infestation and all, and you know, Melissa is so much more than that.